Hey guys, it's Max here with a quick note before the show. Andrew's audio wasn't coming through for the first 40 minutes of the stream, so I took the show down and edited out the parts where Andrew was talking, but the audio wasn't coming through. If you notice any weird cuts, that's what it is. Fortunately, this was all preamble stuff, so he was audibly present for the show analysis. This should all be fixed for next time, unless Murphy or the Gremlins fuck us again. Thanks for your understanding. Without any further ado, here's the show.
So,
Okay.
man, what are those?
Okay, we're back. I fixed everything. Welcome to the show, my dear old friend. I'd like to welcome to the show Andrew, author, game developer, international man of faith. Welcome to the show.
Yeah.
As you can see, we have a new layout today. This one is called Reactor, which is a pun because this is based off of Iron Man's Reactor. But obviously, Andrew and I are doing some reaction nation editing here tonight. I have my chocolate egg cream once again.
Like it's
But that actually reminds me of a Arcane criticism I heard from a economic foundation. Why a economic foundation was commenting on Arcane, I'm not entirely sure. However, the criticism was that there are no good characters in Arcane, by which they don't mean well-written characters, they mean morally good characters. And I sat there for a second, and I'm like, I'm not sure about that. What about Vi? But fortunately for me, he addresses Vi and says, well, actually, she's a bad person because she steals at the beginning of the show. I'm sitting there like, I think this... I don't mean to be dismissive, but there is shows that have very clear good and bad characters. Cartoon Network and Disney both make very excellent shows with that distinction. But I think people like see the kids label and they think, you know, not worth watching. But like stuff like Gravity Falls and I'm trying to think of another great one. Owl House is kind of okay, but there are good like children's animations that have a more like clear distinguishing between the good and evil. Partially because we can't super do very, very complex films for kids. But the other thing is, the entire point of Vi's story is she's trying to save her sister, but she like steals from a rich dude one time, and now suddenly this is off the table, terrible person. I feel like this person may only it may be the case that the only person in a book this person likes is actually Jesus of Nazareth. Like, I feel like this is an insanely high standard. Like, some 14-year-old girl, some poor 14-year-old girl once stole some shit. Fucking Magdala, Hitler, and Genghis Khan all rolled into one. What a piece of shit. I may have gotten someone on board, someone that you know, Andrew, to do a stream for the new Halo show, which I hear is fucking abysmal. I haven't seen it yet, but I do have some thoughts. You mentioned the last episode of this. That's some thoughts, especially relates to episode 7 of this, and how that relates to Mr. John Halo. But I've just heard terrible. I haven't heard any actually good thing. I've not heard a single good thing. Like literally not one single good thing about that show. Which you think, right? Like there are bad shows, but usually you can find one or two things about it that are halfway decent. Yeah, I started us a bit earlier from where we left off. I went through and watched the whole last stream for quality control purposes, and I noticed it's interesting because it's the first time doing a stream like this for both of us. And going back, there's like tons of stuff I could have said that I didn't miss, but just wasn't able to come up. And most of it can come up a bit later. I started this a bit early, so we can start at the beginning of the scene as opposed to the middle of the scene. And there's also a couple things I wanted to say on the song again, because the one thing that I want to touch on that I don't think I did as well as I could have, is how the song. So if you remember from last time, I talked about how the song relates to how Vander. So Vander's underground versus uh, Silco's underground. Which, by the way, I now have. We now have increased technological capabilities on this stream. Our audio is better, and I have now 3 screens, so I can pull stuff up on a third screen instead of just the 2 we normally have. Now that said, there was one other thing. There was a couple of things, right? Brief. So I'll do a brief overview to get to this point from what we covered last time. I'll talk a bit about the thing, and then we'll get started proper. We saw last time went through the bridge scene, how that affected their psychology, how the symbolism in it, and how we relate to those characters later. Then we went through the heist scene where we talked a bunch about colors and how people view themselves. Came back to Zahn, and then we had the introduction to Zahn. We talked a bit about colors and lights and whatnot. And then we get this song as we come in. And we talked a bit about last time how it represents in terms of how the underground sort of presents itself, right? Playground is a lot quieter than the alternative from Silco. It still has the sort of seductive quality where it's like, come in, pull up a seat, come here, come here, Andrew, come on, right? But there's a couple of things within it that I want to elaborate on a bit more. One is about how the concept of how sort of how it what's the words I want to use, how it relates to how people sort of view their future within the underground, right?
Background song?
Yes. So like tell me your nightmares and fantasies, sink into the wasteland underneath, stay for the night, I'll sell you a dream. Which sort of aligns pretty closely with how we understand the Zahnites to view themselves at this point. Right? Zahn kind of sucks. It's a shitty place to live with lots of shitty people. And right, it's a place of nightmares. It's a wasteland, but especially in episode 3, we get to see how Silco, and more importantly, I think for the purposes of this, Savika has this dream of Zahn, this sort of fantastical reality that even once Silco gets in charge isn't really achieved. But the idea that this isn't what sort of sets this apart is in this song it's sort of a ideal or a thought or a dream. It's very ethereal. Whereas when we get to Silco's underground song, Dirty Animals, it's in the moment, very practical, very now, sort of a reflection of what is. Whereas this is the song, Playground is sort of a look at what things could be. And then the other big thing I wanted to talk about was how the song sort of relates. The song sort of represents how Vander sees the people, not beneath him, but the people under him in the underground, right? These, yeah, like hierarchy wise, not which is very, and that's an important distinction to make because we see how Silco Silco views not only the underground, but there's a great scene, episode, I think it's episode 7, where he holds the meetings with the Chem Barons, and we see what he actually thinks of the people who work under him, and it's very different. In Playground, right? Stay for the night, I'll sell you a dream. Pull up a chair or pull up a seat. Make me an offer. Right? It's very working together, whereas it's very cooperative, which falls in line very neatly with how Vander sort of runs the underground. Whereas when we get
secret next to every
and
It's
there's
off the books, but no one knows what.
right, and Silco has Silco, of course, is Silco's underground has its upsides and downsides. But one of the big things is Vander considers everyone around him family. But when you hear how Silco talks about like the other Chem Barons, right, specifically Finn, he refers to him as a parasite, right? And we'll talk a bit about it when we get there. But there's an extreme difference in how they're viewed. And then leading this on finally is the scene that we're starting with now, because we get the lyric is "Welcome to the Lost and Found," and then it immediately shows the last drop, which is why, by the way, in the if you go to the old live stream recordings, I've put chapters in to make navigating them a bit easier. But in Welcome to the Lost and Found, there's this idea of this is a secret place, and the people here are misfits and outcasts of society, and we're trying to build something here together. Whereas, go for it.
It's really.
So I would say two things. One is when we watch this, we should keep in mind that these songs were specifically written and created for the show for these scenes. So I think the music is itself part of the artistic representation and should be taken as such. Because while video is a visual medium, it's also an auditory one. And I think it's a legitimate method to utilize music as a method by which we convey information. The issue for me is when the music and the visuals and whatnot start contradicting. Then I think you get in some bad territory there. Or if it was only music, I think that might not be great because you should use both. And I think the music in these sections is a very good way in which they are using both, because we have the visual elements, right? We seize on as we go through it, and we see the differences when we go back in episode 4. But that's complemented and works in tandem with the music itself. So I think it's legitimate to be taken together, and I think that's an effective way to construct a story or scene. I'm going to push back a little bit on that, because there are the straight lyrics, but lyrics are only one component to a song, and because of what a song is, the style of writing is necessarily different for lyrics, right? Lyrics in songs, you can have like literal lyrics, but lyrics in songs tend to be a bit more esoteric or hard to and more interpretive. But there's also a huge element, which is the melodies the melodies and rhythms and the style of the music, as well as it's basically all these sort of alternative aesthetic stylings that are incorporated in the song, right? Because dialogue is sort of one. You have different characters, and there is like meter within talking to one another, but there is something to be said for how, like, the melody of the song being this sort of slow. I keep using the word seductive for it, but it's like I don't know enough about music itself to explain the theory behind it, but the melody and the rhythm and the way the actual style of the song is constructed is this sort of uh, almost not quite sad, a little lonely, but drawing you in sort of feeling, which would not be present within dialogue itself. As well, the rules are going to be different for constructing, right? If I'm talking to someone, there are a bunch of these sort of rules around how we're doing it, right? It has to make sense as to why these people would be saying it. They have to be things that those people would actually say. And they have to be said in line with the character itself. Whereas with music, there's a lot more. We're going live again. Okay.
Alrighty.
Welcome back, everyone. I think we have fixed everything now. Right, we should be on this screen. And yeah, seems like I'm lighting up. Everything's working. except one of my screens are down. Try doing that. It is probably requires a new. I will need to. Lordy Lord. All right, so you were talking about something, or your audio stopped working. Okay. I am trying to get the correct stream keys out now. Not keys. I'm going to delete that tweet, put out a new one. We don't even have the correct. Everything is breaking apart. Well, I'll edit this into like a proper video tonight or tomorrow. And that's not what I wanted to do either. All right, hashtag Arcane Stream. There we go. I put a tweet out. I deleted the old one. No confusion. If you want to retweet that for me, that's great. And oh yeah, we should probably start sometime soon. You're right. Here, I think that was a mess. All right. Hold on. One more second. I will fix the title card of it later. let's just get something done. Okay. I gotta turn my volume down real quick. And come in here. Yeah, we're live. Yeah, you're coming through on coming through on it. Okay. Tell me when you're good for me to press play. Oh, I have it muted. Okay. All right, we've seen this before. We watched this last time. I'll talk a little bit, but we talked last time. It was about how this was a really good introduction to Vander. It shows his willingness to help people and his consideration for them as family. 'Cause obviously, this guy is having a lot of difficulty, and his Vander chooses to not let him fend for himself, whereas Silco, it's much more common for him to sort of let them deal with the stuff themselves. And so now we are caught up where we left off last time. Andrew, did you want to say anything about the scene up to this point? Yeah, and I'll also say what's nice about you'll notice as he gave them, they called him the Hound of the Underground, which I believe is a foreshadow for season 2. So once again, I apologize for Andrew's audio. That should be fixed now.
Okay. I didn't say anything super interesting, so it'd be good.
All right.
Um,
This is a great scene. Well, the dialogue is pretty good. On 2 counts, right? Because in order to make the deal, she has to take a toke or whatever the cigarette equivalent is, or the pipe equivalent is, from his his pipe. And
hmm.
it functions on 2 levels. One, there's there's like the metaphorical level of interacting with you and being part of this underground thing is vile, but you'll learn to love it. There's also another part because one of the big things in the story is the air quality in Zon. So literally
Oh yeah.
down there, you're breathing in air that's terrible for you, much like cigarettes. Kids, don't do cigarettes or drugs.
And does it suggest also that she is not from around here?
Oh yeah, well, probably right. They're traders, so they're coming to the underground to do trades.
Oh,
It's sort of
okay.
because
Gotcha.
they don't know who Vander is. So you're the Hound of the Underground, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm
So
gonna
they're at least in some way unfamiliar with the area.
right. So part of it is uh, both the literal air, but also the unsavory sorts of deals these people have to make. But
Hmm.
you'll learn to love it eventually, which is a nice touch.
Yeah. And well, I wonder what happens. Like, is it like how common is it for newcomers to end up being like, you know what, I actually do kind of like it down here, and like end up kind of getting used to it and coming to enjoy and appreciate it.
Well, the song would suggest that, right? It has that "Welcome to the Lost and Found" that shows the last drop. So the song suggested that this is a place for misfits and outcasts.
Yeah,
Which, to be fair, if you're like a super wealthy person in Peltover, there wouldn't be a whole lot of reason for you to be coming down here to make these deals, right?
for sure.
And we see throughout the show that the actual wealthy elite of Piltover know literally nothing about the underground.
Hmm.
So uh, it's it's probably what whereas in it's also not hyper busy. It's busy, but it's not like the same level that it is under Silco. So I think it's at this point it's still sort of a secret of the Zon is still a bit of a secret, and so I imagine it's sort of a more close knit. It's hard to tell because spacing in this, as I said earlier, is not super great in terms of how like the actual buildings and people exist within the 3D space of the show. It gets a bit confusing, so it's hard to tell how big Zon actually is. But it seems like that it's a very close knit community, a somewhat smaller community compared to like whole nations or because essentially it's a city state. Uh, so yeah, I think it has comparatively, uh, at least in this point in the show, it's more like a really 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 big secret club.
Hmm.
But
Just the tavern or like the entire like city state?
so here's it's not super clear. It's not also not very clear where Piltover ends and Zon begins.
Hmm.
You'll see that in the second last scene of this show. I'll point it out when we get there, but or of this episode. So
Okay.
it's not super clear, and I'm not sure. But generally, because we keep seeing recurring characters, so what I think is there is the whole of the underground, and there's the lanes, which is the part that Vander deals with, and these lanes specifically are basically one of the or some of the fissures. That's how I interpret it. And then there's a bigger underground that's a whole lot bigger. and Vander sort of just deals in the lanes primarily.
Gotcha. So that's not like confirmed that the Fissures are the lanes?
So it's confirmed that some of Zon is in Fissures,
Okay.
and sort of the lanes make sense to me, but again, it's not super clear.
Right.
Right, I'm gonna.
So there we just saw Vi, right? Yeah,
Yep.
there she is.
I don't think he's going to find out. I think they're going to get away with this scot-free, don't you, Andrew?
Oh, yeah, easy. But also very interesting about their dialogue there, because it talks about their priorities and like their values and stuff of like, well, she destroyed the evidence. Oh, you should have stayed and took a punch. Like, no, you all should have ran away. She was the only one that made the right choice, as we noted last time.
And once again, we have Mylo pointing out something that he can do that she can't.
Hmm.
But let's see if Vander can Scooby Doo the pieces together.
Yeah.
Oh no, he knows. Oh no.
Just like that. I mean, like,
But it does say
yeah.
something about the information network he has down there, that they just got home and already he's heard about it. But also, to be fair, it seems like the news is traveling faster than they are, right? Deckard found out about it before they got back to that area. Now Vander's found out about it before they've gotten back to him. So oddly enough, it seems like Zon has a better information gathering capabilities than Piltover does.
Interesting. Well, I think that is in. Well, I mean, okay, so like they heard the explosion. Well, actually, no. He's saying that they heard talk of the explosion, so it's not like they directly heard it. So, well, that's interesting because Piltover they already would know just by being there. So that actually is raising me question marks.
Right?
Because like, yeah, like if he knows, then like for sure Piltover knows. Because they wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, it must be these and these individuals. That would mainly be people who can either recognize them, or the Decker guy just like he saw them. I don't know if he knew like, oh, you caused it, but like he saw them running, so it's like two and two together. Similar idea with Vander. He saw them. He knows who they are. Oh yeah, they did the explosion. It makes sense that he knows about the explosion. And he can put two and two together. But that makes me think that for sure. Actually, and yeah, come to think of it, we know Piltover already knows. We do know that.
Right. And
Only with the guys that were chasing them, but
right,
what
because
happens there?
the enforcers as well are going to show up very soon. So
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's just a bit amusing that they're able to figure out all this stuff about Piltover. But Piltover, when we get to like the 8th episode, it's like we have no information. We know nothing about this place or who anyone is or any play or literally anything. We need better information,
Yeah.
which isn't super uncommon in like these sort of asymmetrical uh, power differences scenarios. Uh, I think this may have been as well the same with like the IRA and the British government, but it's been a while since I read my stuff on that. But it's generally it's a lot easier to infiltrate um, like an actual established government than is any sort of uh, it's a lot more difficult to sort of infiltrate those and pass off information than it is in some of the rebel organizations. And that's probably for a number of different reasons, right? I imagine if you're part of a rebel or some sort of criminal organization and you snitch, you get shot. Whereas uh, if you're, it's very unlikely that the state will hang you. It'd have to be pretty serious. But I thought it was interesting because it's once again showing the sort of ingenuity of the people of Piltover and the abilities that these people have. It sort of reinforces the idea of this sort of disequal treatment where they have to do all this stuff to get even the basics by and have to be more competent, right? It's what's it? Everyone's favorite senator Armstrong. Uh, if you've ever heard his speech, which is great, even if it's like impractical, but he's like going through all this made you strong, and you built your own path and you made your own way. Sort of goes to sort of the sort of Zonic spirit compared to the Piltovers, but we're getting a bit into the weeds here, so let's bang through a bit more of the show. He doesn't even wait for him to confirm it. He knows, right? And he has that disappointment, like, come on, this was dumb, and sort of really well in a very good way displays sort of the parental relationship that he's taken on in this time. No, you wanted to say something?
No, I just went to mute myself because it was I've been blinking.
Okay. Okay, it's still coming through on your end.
Oh, I just muted myself right after it started playing.
Okay. And that was kind of a nice shot as well. I'm gonna that down. But he has that like, come on, think, Vi, think, right? And then she has
Another thing.
that look.
Stop to think about what could have happened.
There you go. She has that look where right? She has that look up where her eyes go wide, looks at all the people her friends who could have been seriously hurt or killed.
Yeah.
And then right here, the look away, mouth covering. Right, it's a lot of detail in like a couple of movements that tells you basically everything you need to know about what she's thinking. Right, he's very clearly, dumb, think, Vi, think, and then she thinks for a second, and she's like, oh yeah, this was actually really bad.
And it's interesting because we saw in the first half of this, like, she was making a lot of mistakes while thinking she's 100% right. Which I thought that was really interesting how that was conveyed. So it's also interesting that it's like, oh yeah, shoot, like I thought this was something that you'd think was cool, but I also kind of knew, and this is kind of the confirmation and like the, oh yeah, I screwed up.
Yeah, I found it really unrealistic because children never think that they know best about anything and then screw up majorly.
Yeah. No, it's yeah, it's quite good.
Let's play a little bit more. So this is a bit dialogue here is nice. Once again, we get a reference to Little Man, who once again we have no idea who he is.
Yep.
Right, and you sort of, I always picture it as it's going to be like it's going to be like it's going to be a giant fat dude.
Yep.
Right.
The Duke in Avatar.
Yeah, that's who I was picturing because it's usually like, the expect right. It's a I forget what the actual term, but it's a joke through juxtaposition. But we also here have Vi, right? Her first go to is, hold on, you said.
Yep.
right? Which makes sense
It's
because
not
her
even.
character is
It's not
very
even like an. It's not even like an argument at all. It's like, yeah, in your place in this world doesn't mean screw up and like make an explosion, nearly get yourselves all killed. Like obviously, like your earn your place quest is gonna be your like sneak into this like I don't know lesser nobleman or something like your fetch quest. You're like okay, I'll let you into the thieves guild if you can do this for me, not freaking like go blow this up. Like yeah.
earning your place is putting money down for the mortgage, investing in your 401k, Vi. You can't retire in jail, Vi. No, but there's also a great meta conversation happening too, because we know how Vi is and we know how Vander is. He probably knows how she is, right? And the meta conversation is, I'm trying to be like you, right?
Yeah.
You tell us to do this, and he's saying, I tell you this too, which is the meta equivalent. Like, I'm trying to be you. Well, you're doing a bad job. This is not what I would do. This is a terrible decision.
Yeah, and I do like how much influence she has learned from him, but like the fact that she still hasn't, like she's still a child, like she still hasn't learned everything that she was supposed to learn from him.
Yeah. But, it's kids, I guess.
Yeah, that's great.
Right, let's play a little bit more. And I think this is a good job reinforcing the nature of their relationship.
Yeah,
And
100%.
right, she comes
Very
out.
much dad.
Yeah.
100% dad, and she's not like sure she's like upset and whatever, and she's trying to defend herself and stuff, but like she gets it, like it's dad, like
Yeah. And it's sort of and it also speaks a bit of how he handles this well compared to how someone, because it's just basically she's insulting him a little bit, right?
yeah, absolutely.
And he's like, okay, everyone else out. Everyone gets up and leaves.
Yep. So
But
has he effectively adopted all four of these?
yeah.
Okay.
There's a line that kind of confirms it in episode 3, right? Mylo and Klager says, he's our dad too, right?
Okay.
And then right, and it has that nice where it's like clearly in fight mode, and he's like, no, sit down, we're going to have a
Mhm.
talk. And her attitude it shifts, and now we're going to get an important lesson on the importance of responsibility.
Based Vander.
Now listen, Vi, you gotta clean your room. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, or else the dragon will come for you, and we will be filled with snakes, and you won't rescue your father from the underworld.
That's actually not a bad impression.
And you know what? It's right. She doesn't rescue her dad from the underworld.
Yeah, you know why? Because she didn't listen to her dad in the underworld.
If Vi had only cleaned her room, Andrew would still be alive. There's also, I just thought of it. I said it, but the song that plays when Vi fights not Vander's, Silco's goons in episode 8 is the chorus is singing about how you're a snake, which I think is directed at Silco. But yeah. You couldn't rescue your father from the giant snake.
Yeah, you had one job.
And now you're in jail, and what kind of life is that? Is that where you want to be?
Now, you have to ask yourself, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
We can't do 10 because if we give a kid like you 10, you won't be able to understand. They can't even perceive that far.
Oh man.
Okay, let's
Oh, yeah, let's
stop.
go.
Okay. There's a nice look away. Right, so the facial expressions are great in this too, right? Vi is doing the typical teenage girl thing of, I'm listening, but I'm not really listening. Which Jinx does a little bit with her talk with Silco. A bit of a parallel there. But we have Vander gives his talk, which is highly representative of who he is. Right? Because he has a talk on the bridge, which relates to this. And the importance of responsibility and good decision making. But we sort of get this insight because Vander essentially has taken responsibility for everyone who's died on the bridge, and he feels he's responsible for that, which is confirmed in the second episode when he talks about, listen, if I hadn't led these people across this bridge, your parents would still be alive, which is a bit of a heartbreaking thought. But then this is why this is the kind of lesson he's trying to teach, because he's like, listen, you can have good intentions and you can be upset about things and not, but at the end of the day, you have to live with the decisions you've made. And if your decisions lead to all these bad outcomes for everyone, it doesn't matter the method by which you got there. Or to some extent, he's saying the methods by which you are using to resolve will inevitably lead you there. But ultimately, you're going to end up in this place where people may get hurt or people may die, and you will be responsible for that. And so you should make these decisions understanding what's really at stake. Which there is this face here, which like she's starting to get it, but she doesn't really get what he's trying to say until the bridge scene in episode 2.
Yeah, and she definitely doesn't understand the like full ramifications of that, like obviously. Like, and it's also interesting of like what Vander wants to teach her. He's not telling her don't do this stuff. He sort of is, but he's mainly saying like, yeah, like I know you're gonna get in trouble. I know you're gonna do things that are gonna be dangerous. But you have to do them with prudence. You have to understand what you're doing. You have to understand that because you're in that position of leadership, you're also that prudence like quadruples now because you have 4 other people that you have to kind of like make sure that they're all gonna make it out safely and whatever. And like because we already know that she's good at like knowing who's good at what and who should do what and stuff, but she also is careless, very careless, and that's the thing that she's gonna have to like figure out, right?
Yeah, I think the big thing
Maybe
she's
not
trying to get
careless, but
across is, right, if you remember from earlier in the episode when she goes and the I think it's Mylo or Clagger is saying like, hey, I'm not sure about this. He says, I'm going, you can come if you want.
yeah.
And so what he's saying is she has this sort of attitude up until this point that I'm going to do my thing. And you guys can come along with me. Where he's saying, no, this is not an acceptable way of conducting these decision making. You have to, when you make a decision, you have to take everyone's best interest in what they want into consideration. You can't just make it for yourself. And this is why he has the line, you don't get to be selfish.
Okay. Well, I mean, but sorry, has that already passed? I don't recall that being
Yeah.
is that he's gonna say it in a second.
No, he's like, you don't get to be selfish.
Yeah.
If you say light a fire, they show up with oil. It's right before that part.
Right. But I don't interpret that as him saying like you have to take into account what everyone wants. I interpret that as him saying like can see how your role is kind of developing in this, like see myself in you a bit. You need to understand that people are going to do what you say.
Right.
that has consequences.
Want may be the wrong word, but he's telling her to take everyone else's interests to heart when making these decisions.
Yes,
Right?
I mean like well-being in terms of like the consequences of the
Yeah.
dangerous actions that she's gonna take if she's gonna be like taking on this fight or like quote unquote fight, like whatever their exploits and whatnot.
To sort of simplify what I think what I think he's saying is you can't do what you want. You have to do what's best for everyone.
Yeah, yeah, that boils it down.
All right, let's get a bit further into it. Okay, and so we sort of have the different because obviously Vi doesn't like Piltover.
Hmm.
I wonder if there was anything earlier in the show that would indicate why she doesn't like.
Oh no, there was no hellscape.
Right,
I mean,
that scene at the end is one of the reasons. Like the audience, not all audiences see, but seeing the scene, one of the things that probably comes to mind is that last scene where she's staring up at Piltover like I'm gonna fucking kill these people.
absolutely, we just know that they're evil. They're evil. They're rich. They're whatever. They don't care about anybody or anything.
Yeah, we're getting ready to sign up to Hassan Piker's stream and make
Oh
bits for the
no.
revolution. But no, but obviously she's a lot more hostile toward. Right? He's saying because his argument is boiling down. Well, we can't do this because Piltovers will be mad. And her counter is, well, I don't care about them. They're fucking
Yeah.
assholes.
Why?
Fuck
It's like
them all to death.
why would you even like say that? Like, why did you cross that bridge if you're gonna say like if you're gonna like do what they want anyway?
Right? And he says, you're not hearing me. This only causes more trouble, which is it's not a direct way of saying it, but Vander's coming this, and this gets really cleared up in second act when he brings her to the bridge. He's come from the perspective of, listen, I don't like them either, but fighting them now be worse for us and our people than fighting them would be.
Hmm.
Right? He's not willing to take the necessary risks and damages to fight them. Right? And we see over the next episode, the one after this, how difficult life starts becoming for them when they start sending the enforcers down. And this is the kind of thing he wants to avoid. Right? This relates back to the song. He wants to keep this a sort of secret underground place, both literally and figuratively, where everyone can just survive. And that's sort of a big difference. And this is how this is not Silco, Echo's great quote. It's not enough to give people what they need to survive. You need to give them what they need to live. But Vander's
Hmm.
preoccupied with survival at the moment, and this is the best way
Hmm.
they can do it. Whereas Vi is more interested in the dream itself of a better Zon with better conditions for everyone. Right? We wanna play a little bit more. Oh, and it's also nice that he finishes the talk, and the first thing he does is, okay, let's get you healed up.
Yeah. And for a second, I thought like I didn't know what he was like opening. I thought, oh, he's just gonna like take a drink, but it's like medicine or like alcohol for disinfectant or whatever. So that's interesting. It's like
You
yeah,
thought he was going to start drinking and throwing haymakers, Andrew?
no, not haymakers, but just like I don't know, just like
Are you saying Vander is actually Amber Heard?
I mean, I consider it something. Like just interesting because it's like. I mean, because they're like they just showed like a bar. I mean, it would make sense. It would be fine, but no, he's just just helping. Yeah, he's just helping her out. That's all he's doing.
Yeah,
Chill. Fine.
play a bit more. right? So one, this is sort of setting up for Silco, but two, what's great about this scene is everyone coming in was upset with Powder. Not everyone, but Milo was upset with Power because they lost the stuff. Everyone's saying that's a bad job because they lost the stuff. And then Vander's like, "Did you lose? What happened? We lost it. All of it? Yeah, good."
Yes, and he's absolutely right because for something to have been stolen, like you need evidence, and it's like we don't have anything stolen. Search the place. Like yeah, like okay, you don't.
Right? But it's very interesting because we
Even
sort of
advantage
see
to it.
the difference in understanding and the difference in priorities.
Yes, for sure.
Once again,
Priority
technically,
of
I
like
guess Powder's MVP. She got rid of everything.
yeah, she literally did what she the ultimate the best outcome should have been. In her mind, though, that's not going to matter at all. She has no idea. Because everyone's saying she's wrong, right? And she doesn't know what Vander thinks. At least not. I don't know if they have a conversation, but that's very interesting.
Yeah, but I like the idea that no, we got all the stuff. Great, ditch it.
Yeah.
Right? None of
If
this
you
none of
had
this
gotten it.
actually mattered. It was never important. You don't understand what's important. You're not
Yeah.
thinking, Vi. You need to think, Vi. Think. All right, let's play play a bit more. And of course now he's of course I'll let play a little bit while he gets this. But as soon as I'm gonna pause it here. As soon as the whole thing's calmed down, he's like, we're going to be okay though, right? Shows that she still has that trust and he is this pillar of support for them, which is a nice touch. It tells us the depth of the character without a whole lot.
Yeah, but it also like everyone in the audience hypothetically should be thinking here like wait, okay, hold on, what's he gonna do exactly? Because what could he do, right? We like again like all like what you've mentioned like like we know Piltover is like evil, 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 right? So what's he gonna do, right? Is he gonna fight them or something now? Is he gonna like somehow like talk them out of it? Like what's gonna happen? And then like we kind of see what the way that things go from there. But like even just here, like before we know that, it's like I don't know. It just seems like really like what the heck could he do, and what are the consequences, right? Like sure they don't have the stuff anymore, but like people have seen them. Like surely that's excuse me, surely that's not just like that's not like everyone should kind of know that that's not something that's just gonna like okay that's fine. It was a learning moment for our characters and we're gonna move on. No, like that's we're beyond that.
Yeah. And then as well, while we're sort of in that mystery of what he's going to do, we start seeing him picking stuff up, right? Like something's happening, but we're not really quite sure, and it does a fair bit to preserve the mystery until it actually next scene.
Hmm.
All right, let's watch a little bit. Oh, and of course he has the right because she's upset. He's like, well, you did beat him up, right? Hey, which is makes her sort of helps her back out of the press mood
Yes.
and plays to her strengths, but also kind of reinforces her sort of views on violence and not.
True, true. She's very like eager to get into a fight.
Which is something he brings up to Benzo upcoming scene. Let's see if we
Hmm.
can get there before we run out of time for
Actually, can I real quick be right back?
tonight. Sure.
1 minute. Okay.
I will entertain the stream while you're gone and talk about Arcane, I guess. There. Okay, there we go. So should have left right before I started going on my spiel about how about all this stuff. But yeah, we had the set for Silco, and there'll be a cool part in the next scene where he talks to Benzo, which sets it up a bit more, which may have been missed by some viewers. But in this scene, once again, we have the we have this is nice. Fly look over like you did, didn't you? And there's sort of an element of pride in it, I think, as well, where he's like, oh yeah, that's my girl beating up those assholes, which on one hand reinforces the violence of the sort of.
I'm back.
Oh, okay. I'll finish my point. Uh, what I was just saying that his looks here and the way he goes into it indicates a level of pride in Vi for being able to handle herself, which on one hand sort of reinforces her notions of violence, like I said earlier, but is probably legitimately a necessary uh, tactic for survival within the underground. Right? We'd see it more under Silco really than we do here, but there's probably a lot of criminality and a lot of violence, and so there is a necessity to be able to defend oneself, especially a Vander who become sort of a peacekeeper in recent years is in a position where like, okay, violence is definitely necessary sometime, and
Yeah.
it makes sense in connection with the scene at Benzos where he talks about how there's worse things than forcers out there. So it gives us a bit of world building. But see if we can get a little farther. That's kind of an interesting scene.
Yeah, well, he just told her like, yeah, like I hope you didn't find anything, but now he told them like, well, you didn't get anything, so what did you do? Like, it's confusing. So what's he doing here?
Well, I think there's a couple of things happening.
Hmm.
Um, one part of this is, I think the lesson here that he's trying to impart is that these kids are sort of doing this job because they can, by even says we can handle a real job, right? So there's this level of we want to be taken seriously, we want to be adults, which of course never happens with any real children in real life. But what I think here is a very simple way to say, listen, as kids, right, you get a lot of passes for, and the flip side to that is you're not supposed to be going on these jobs. But if you take these dangerous jobs, right, these things have consequences, and more sort of serious you want to be taken, the more responsibility you have, and the more responsibility, the more dire the consequences of the actions you take. And so this time, all Milo lost was his listening in device, which, by the way, means he overheard the conversation where Vander is saying, "Hey, this is probably a good thing you didn't get anything."
Yeah,
So
exactly. Which kind of, I don't know. I don't know what he's getting. Like what? Like I mean, I get why he would say that to him, especially to be like, all right, well, want to be treated like an adult? Okay, well, come help me out. Like we're doing a real job, and you're gonna
well,
actually
no,
do
he
something
doesn't.
useful.
He brings Clagger along. He doesn't bring Milo.
He doesn't bring Milo.
Yeah, he only brings Clagger.
Okay.
So there's sort of two parts that I want to talk about. One is I think he's saying, listen, if you're playing with the big boys, there's going to be big boy consequences. So don't be stupid. You lost your this thing listening in device this time, but next time it could be a lot more. right? And then
That's not really how does that tie into him saying don't come back from a job empty-handed?
well, so how I interpret it is when you take a job, when you do anything, you're responsible for it. So if you take a job, you're responsible for getting that job done, right? And so by coming back empty-handed, you fail the thing you were trying to do, and there's consequences. When you mess up, there's consequences. This time it was just the listening in device, but it could have been they could have been caught and gone to prison or a number of other things. So I think the lesson here he's trying to impart is listen, don't go and start don't don't not think through stuff. Don't just be doing shit, random stuff. Right? The stuff you do has consequences. And you're going to have to take responsibility for those consequences, even if they're bad.
But isn't the takeaway message from that line more so like, okay, I'm gonna get in trouble if I don't bring stuff back, even though we nearly got like killed, beaten up by those guys, and like arrested by the Piltover guards? Like,
Well,
the
no,
message
it
seems
could
to be
be.
more so, okay, so we should have tried even more and done even more crazy stuff.
Maybe, but so sort of two ways how you would interpret it, which is one, it could be that this is an offhand comment, so Vander's not thinking deeply. Or it could be that Vander is saying that in the context of knowing that Mylo listened in on everything because he's seen the device and he's taken it. Which makes a bit more sense to me because he doesn't want him listening in on stuff. So he may have said that under the assumption that Mylo already heard the talk he had with Vi and understands that he's saying that going on these jobs are bad ideas. And he's
So he's kind of like sort of intentionally contradicting himself and saying, when you do these kinds of jobs the right way, actually do them the right way such that you can yield a result. Part of yielding that result means that you necessarily are going to be safe, but yeah, like ultimately your goal is going to be to bring something back. Is that kind of like, am I missing the mark there?
kinda. I think he's trying to highlight the difference between how they want to be. It's I think it's like the. Have you ever heard the Bill Burr joke about feminists?
I don't think so.
Okay, Bill Burr has a great bit where he talks about how women, feminists or women don't want to be equal. They just want all the good bits of men's life. Right? Equal pay, I'll take some of that. Staying on the Titanic, no thank you. Right? It's a funny bit, and anyone who hasn't seen, I recommend watching it. But I think he's saying like, listen, you want to do this, tons, this you want this sort of perception, and you want to be treated like this. Then you need to understand or the risks and things involved with it, right? If you want to be an adult, the treatment for that is very different than how you would be treated as a kid, and you should understand that. You should understand both you should take both the good parts that you want, um, with understanding that that comes with a number of stuff that is not so great. It's a trade off. You should be aware of that and understand that.
Hmm. Okay, so it kind of boils down to a sort of like have your cake and eat it too situation, like just basically like reinforcing all that.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Right. Let's see if we can get to Benzos is the next scene. This scene is powder.
Alrighty.
Oh no! Not all
Oh
of it was
no.
stitched.
Okay, this is the face of a disaster waiting to happen.
I'm sure nothing could possibly.
No, 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 no. This Max, I've seen this used before in visual media. This is
This is what they call a.
foreshadowing.
Is this what they call a shade in the distance.
It's also called Chekhov's gun, which is also called setup. Every setup has a payoff.
Right. There's a couple of nice things here. One, before Vander leaves, he has that line where he's like, "Tell me everything, Clagger," which tells us that he has some trust in Clagger, but also it saves us the time of having like a bunch of clunky
yeah.
dialogue where they rehash stuff we already know.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, he knows. Here's why. We have a throwaway line. We're good.
Right. And then we also have Powder digging through the trash like Oscar the Grouch, kind of trash goblin. For I don't know if it shows super, but it's parts for her boom boom device, her big explodies, her bomb grenades. I couldn't think of any more. But yeah, right. And it doesn't, people are forgetful. It doesn't surprise me that the one thing she put in her side pocket she forgot. I don't think that's unreasonable. And then she sees it and it glows, and she's probably thinking, "Oh, hang on a second. I didn't get rid of all the treasure. I still have some of the treasure. Oh, look at me. Miss Smarty Pants may have just saved the whole operation." And I'm sure when she goes to see Vi, that there's going to be nothing but, praise and happiness and whatnot. I'm sure nothing bad will happen next time she goes to talk to Vi.
Yeah, because as most I don't know how old she is, like 8 or something. I don't know. As most young childs know, well, yeah, that makes
But
sense. She would totally know that she should not actually have this thing.
but as a bit of
Yeah.
a setup, part of what I think is happening here, this will be set for some commentary later, is Powder is sad. She's sad girl because she messed Job up. But now she
Oh,
finds a way in which she didn't mess Job up. Now she's happy girl.
hey.
And I think this you'll see why I think this is a relevant comment a little later. But let's see if we can get to Benzos.
I mean, I think that's kind of like all of like the foundation of her character, right?
Well, I was just going to say wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and move on. But if you want to just winks and the nudges, fine.
Hey, it's like I'll see your foreshadowing and raise you one spoiler.
No, son of a bitch. But look at how she runs. She's so happy. Oh no, this isn't
Uh-oh.
happy at all.
This is terrible.
And what's the first thing he brings up? You remember
First
what was
thing,
in that bag? She messed up Job. Sad girl.
yeah, and also first thing she hears is like she's a problem or something like that.
Little girls who can't get jobs done are problems.
Yeah.
Right, and once again, this is all job related stuff, and Vi's response is she made a mistake, which is not really taking into account what Vander said,
Not at all. Just like, yeah, okay, forget it. Like,
which is absurd because children are such good listeners.
yes, and also children are very well known to understand the kind of subtext behind things that are said, and him saying good, well, actually no, because he literally says like, yeah, you can't have any tie to it, and she's just like, yeah, dad, come on,
Clearly,
honey.
Vi
Treasure.
does not watch Rick and Morty.
Clearly Vi is acting in character here, and she
Right, let's listen to the dialogue a bit more.
it is interesting. Actually, give a pause for a second, because it's interesting because she is like defend, like she's standing up for her a little bit. Like she made a mistake, like it's fine, but she also doesn't defend her in the way that she should be, of like enforcing what Vander said. Like, yeah, like we shouldn't have, like we should have been like way more careful, or not have done that to begin with. Like, yeah,
Right, she's very clearly saying, mess up Job bad.
Yes.
Powder mess up Job, Powder bad girl.
Yes.
But she's not unredeemably evil. That's what we're getting. Listen, I know my sister is a screw-up who can't do anything right, but she's not literally Hitler, and that should count for something.
Look, Milo, I get my sister is literally Hitler, but at least she isn't, worse than Hitler.
Listen, Milo, I'm trying to set the bar really low here. You're over here playing high jump when we're supposed to be trying to do limbo, okay? But yeah, and of course she's overhearing this, and I wonder maybe this will be the end of it. Maybe they won't see anything else that's mean. Let's see. Oh no!
Oh
That's
no!
not good at all.
What?
But
Oh.
here's something that's interesting in the sort of way the scene's constructed. Each time he like finishes the point, he slams the ball against the wall. So not only is this like an emotional blow, there's actually the sound of a physical blow with each of these emotional hits.
Oh.
Which was a nice touch.
That's really quite a thing to say, especially like given like the reality of the situation. Him saying that he was twice as good as her when she was half as or like when he was half as young as her or whatever. Like
Yeah, which is probably there's two parts to this. One which is how this awful this is. I'm sure you'll get it. But the other thing is that this is sort of a theme's probably not the right word, but it's sort of a consistency in the show where people don't remember things as they happen because people don't remember things as they happen. They remember things as filtered through whatever subconscious lens. Right.
Sure,
So
they'll be selective and whatnot.
right, so for example, Vi in episode 4 makes a comment about she does all this awesome sweet parkour skills, and Caitlin catches up with her and she's like, "Hold on, this was very difficult." And she's like, "What are you talking about? My sister could do all this when she was 7, no problem." But we very clearly see at the beginning of this episode that no, she can't. So there's a way of remembering things.
It's quite difficult for her.
Right. So there's a way that the characters, which mirrors very well humans in real life, sort of remember things that rose-tinted glasses is the term that everyone likes to use. People tend to remember things a bit differently and a bit more dramatically than they actually happened. But I'm sure you want to talk a little bit about how this is probably a pretty fucking brutal thing to say.
Yeah, because I mean, even just given that it's like objectively not true, because they're just about equal, right? In like different things. Like he is more skilled at some things. He's not even like he's not that good of a like parkour guy or whatever, right? Like we saw him kind of being like, he did fine, but he was like, oh, watch me, and it's like, yeah, okay, nice. And then like his lockpicking is obviously really good, but as we noticed, she has a whole bunch of her own talents. She has the skill of tinkering, which okay, it was misplaced because she does not have she does not have prudence for sure. She just like released the bomb and or wait, no, sorry, hold on. She's not. Oh yeah, no, okay. She tinkers with the thing, but it kind of okay. I guess it doesn't go off. The explosion comes from the crystal. But in any case, she does have the knowledge of valuables, which is very much an important thing. What they're doing, because well, I mean, obviously they're looking for treasure. She's the one that knows what the treasure actually is.
Yeah,
yeah, and whether she's good or not at like making the explosive. I mean, oh, okay. I guess maybe she's not quite as good at as Mylo is at lockpicking, but I mean, she is half his age or however much younger she is, and it probably is pretty comparable to how good he was at lockpicking then, given how good he is now.
Yeah.
It seems like just super unfair of a thing for him to say, and especially for I don't know what Vi's gonna follow up with, but it doesn't seem accurate. It seems like she's exactly at the pace that she should be compared to them. There.
And this is part of why I pause it here, because Powder is going to leave, and we'll hear the rest of what Vi has to say.
Oh.
So, in addition to that being a funny scene, oh no, Powder wasn't there to hear the good parts. Which, to be honest,
so that reminds me, that was actually mentioned on the EFAB coverage. I remember now that I've actually seen it. I didn't see. I don't I didn't know what they were talking about when they did. So it didn't stick in my mind. But seeing it now, like, oh my goodness, like it's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's fine, but it's like.
But even so, this part
It's not.
here
It's
is
not,
a lot more
it's something
positive.
that. Sorry.
So the part here is a lot more positive, right? But there's still this sort of conceptualization where Powder is my problem.
Yeah.
Right, which is sort of not a good indication of how she's really sort of seeing her. Like, obviously she loves her and cares about her, but generally we don't like to use problems to refer to care about.
Yeah.
But
I
it
guess
sort of
it could
shows, like,
be
she's young, she
starting.
makes a mistake, right? She's saying it as something like, you know, Powder is someone who is not who, right? The line we get at the beginning is "you are ready." So she's sort of indicating that there is sort of a state in which Powder is ready and will be useful, and she's not quite there yet.
I mean, going back to that, I don't think like I don't think Vi actually thought that Powder was ready. I thought she was just saying that to encourage her in order to make her feel good.
Sure, but it sort of, to some extent, right? She's saying that because they haven't brought her on any sort of job like this before.
Yeah.
So there is there. Well, she might not be ready. She's close enough to where Vi would say, "Okay, now you can be of value to us," which isn't
Mm.
actually what she's saying, but that's going to be how Powder sort of interprets it. I don't get
But
left behind anymore because I can
but
provide value.
doesn't Mylo essentially suggest that she often screws up in certain kinds of ways, or is this the first time that it happened?
So Milo says that she screws up all the time. The way I sort of interpret what's happening there is he's talking to her about generally, but they haven't taken her on any like super. They haven't taken her on any missions like that or anything that's really dangerous.
Or even just like she screws up like around the tavern and
Yeah.
or like clumsy or whatever.
Yeah, she's saying she's a screw up generally, not
Yeah.
that. Though he does say she jinxes every job.
Hmm.
But I'm gonna guess that, right, because Vander and there talk about it, that there's probably a difference between the jobs they were. Well, there's clearly a difference between the job they were doing and this job.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
probably a level of job that they're okay bringing Powder along for, and then a level of job that they're not okay bringing Powder along for. And so
I don't think that any of them have ever done a job like the one that they had just done.
I would agree. I don't think they've done a job
Right.
like this before. There's some lines later that kind of confirm that, but there's
Yeah.
probably stuff that they do with Powder and stuff that they don't do with Powder.
Yeah, but all I mean is that like when Vi is telling Powder you're ready, she's not like it maybe Powder feels because she doesn't know what like maybe she has a different perception of them just naturally, like maybe she's been on every
My
job, maybe not on all of them,
my
but
issue
like
is that she clearly, because this is the second time she's telling her. She asks her, "What did I tell you before?" And Powder says she's ready. So this is clearly new,
oh right, okay.
right? So there's, at least to me, it's sort of this indication that this is something that there's like the levels of things she's ready and things she's not ready for.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
okay, so maybe there is something there.
right, Let's try and
Yeah,
get
there
as much.
definitely is like from that. Yeah.
Let's got about half hour left, 14 minutes on the clock. So let's get through it as fast as we can.
Yeah. We can.
That's a pretty great way to establish who these people are, right?
Mhm.
You know, they're close enough to start ripping on each other, but they're good friends. He's about to kick Echo out in a second, so there's like an understanding that when he comes, it's for something important,
Hmm.
and it's done with very very little, and it's a very humorous scene.
Yeah. But it's also interesting that like Vander is kind of seen as the leader. Like he's on good enough terms with everybody that the guy can tell him to f off and they can just laugh about it. And yeah, cool. He's a nice guy.
Yeah, that is a right, because you have some leaders who will kill you if you insult them, some who don't.
Hmm. Yep. And some that will join in on the fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
interesting.
let's play a bit more. The Canyon opinion is a fan service. Also, look at his walk cycle. Very silly.
It's a bit choppy. I can't quite see like the details of that, but
Oh, he's got like a
it's a
hoppy.
little bit smoother now.
Also, before, well, actually, I'll point out later.
Oh, it's just
Let him
really
go.
choppy again.
But Canyon Pinion is a reference in League, so it's a nice bit of fan service that doesn't like mess with the show. But if you know League and you know it well enough, you'll catch it.
Is that like something that he like spawns or something?
I have no idea. I just know
Okay.
I'm not that into League. I don't main Echo.
Right.
There's a couple interesting things about that. One, we know now Vander is collecting taxes, so this is like a somewhat formal system of government.
Hmm.
One,
Yeah.
half the Undercity is now aware. Once again, news is spreading very quickly. And the other big thing, there's kind of an interesting. You might want to read into a little about why you mucking about with all this stuff, right? It's there for the pretense, but they both know that's not why they're there. But one of the interesting things is, Vander comes, like, she throws herself at trouble wherever she can find it, which sort of sort of juxtaposed to Deckard's declaration is, in my experience, trouble finds you.
Hmm.
It's kind of an interesting juxtaposition of the two. There's probably some truth in both of it, right? Vi would not be in any sort of trouble if she didn't go on the job. But also, she wouldn't have been in trouble if Deckard didn't want her shit. So probably some truth in both sides of the statement. And then
Oh, she wouldn't have had the stuff if she hadn't went out looking to get it.
Murphy's Law. Probably the thing we take away is you shouldn't be putting yourself in positions in which trouble will be able to find you.
Yeah, that's
Or actually, we should be saying, shouldn't put yourself in situations. But yeah, then of course, sort of a great line about the difficulties of generational knowledge or whatnot, where he's like, I don't understand how she can do dumb shit like this. And he's like, well, we did dumb shit like this. You did dumb shit like this. We know better not to do dumb shit, but they don't. And they're going to keep doing dumb shit. Because that's how they are. They're going to do dumb shit, and then one day they're going to have kids. And they're going to do dumb shit. And they're going to go into their friend's store and say, how can they do all this dumb shit? It's the circle of life. A bit further in. Right, I mentioned this scene while you were gone, but two things from this scene, because I mentioned this both while you were gone, but this is sort of an indication of why Vander, despite being heavily pacifist, would be in favor of Vi knowing how to defend herself, because there's worse things out there than enforcers and dangerous things. But how he accentuates that is by grabbing his wrist, which, as we know from episode 3, is one of the places where Silco cuts him when Vander tries to drown him. Which you wouldn't catch first time round. You would have to catch on your second watch. But he's clearly, this is an indication that he's thinking about Silco specifically.
Yeah. Oh shoot. Man, I was gonna say something, but it slipped my mind. Oh well. It was just said right before this. He said, there are worse things out there than enforcer. Oh yeah. Okay. Yes, that I remember. So, up until this point, as you underlined, the enforcers, we've seen them as pretty freaking bad. So to say, hey, there's worse things out there than enforcers, then it's like, okay. So we're talking some pretty serious threats here.
Especially when it comes to Vander, who was there with Vi and Powder,
Yep.
and was personally fighting the enforcers. It has a lot of weight. He says it.
Absolutely.
And aside from this being like, this is where Silco cuts him, and so that's why it grabs there. In a nice touch. It also indicates us that there's some sort of history that exists that we don't know about.
Yes. Which is good.
It is good. All right, let's see if we can get through Benzos. And that, of course, is Benzo knows who Silco is as well. So this is a very subtle way that he's communicating. There's a problem. The problem's Silco. So we get to see Echo for the first time. He's obviously a fun, happy kid. We instantly like him. The audience generally. We sort of see Plager, who has gone through this now and understands how serious this is very like super unenthusiastic about the job.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas little man Echo is still like, oh, this was a great idea that you guys went and did this. Which
sorry, so Echo is little man?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And then we get like the karate moves, which is very endearing. And then we have the line about so the guy who you robbed came to the shop and bought a bunch of stuff. Didn't haggle. I charged him double price. Which one
what's his name?
Jace.
Jace. Yeah.
Which one is hilarious. Two, makes right. Everyone knows the story about you go to China, they charge you double price, or anywhere really you're a foreigner, you get the foreigners up count.
Yeah.
They jack your prices. But it also demonstrates
he came by freaking clueless, like Piltover has no idea what's going on down there. guy, completely like this kid was able to swindle this guy who we know is a genius.
Right. And so 3, this practice of swindling, like not being in the know, it is perfectly acceptable. Right? He's bragging about it, which makes sense given the song we heard earlier. This is a secret club. We told you what was down here, right? And they're
Yeah.
scraping coins together, so it makes sense why it's like this. 4, this sets up later for Jace, because of course he's getting all these sort of dangerous implements, and this is one of the places he got it from, which creates a great world building connection. 1 and 2, sets up for later in the show when we meet Jace in the next episode, and what he's like. And we know now that he's fine going to shady parts to get equipment, so it's not as surprising we find out he has a ton of illegal equipment there. And then
Jace is considerably older than our main characters, right?
Yeah, he's like 20 something, I think.
Yeah.
And then there was a 5th point that I can't quite remember. Did you want to say anything while I try to recover my 5th point I wanted to say?
That was more or less everything I wanted to say.
Well, when I rewatch this later, I'm gonna kick myself for not remembering what the 5th
was there something that you were looking to say about Echo? Because you were saying earlier that he's like very particularly likable.
I remember what the 5th thing was.
Okay.
And we get the line that Jace, when he wanted this stuff, didn't even haggle. I wonder if this line will become relevant later in the future. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Oh, I actually don't know the foreshadowing in this reference.
Well, we'll find out in episode 9.
Oh, okay.
I mean, maybe we'll find out at some point in the future. I don't know if it's relevant or not. Who knows?
Well,
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
There's 9 episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So by the end of the show, we'll find out if there had been a reference or not.
I'll say this now. This comes up later in episode 9 in my favorite scene in the whole show.
Well, now you spoiled it.
I mean, maybe it comes up in what might possibly could be, no promises, favorite scene in the whole show.
There you go.
But
I mean, it would have been your favorite scene.
If it weren't for those meddling kids and their damn stuff. Okay, we don't got a whole lot of time left, so
yeah, let's go.
Let's try and blitz through this as best we can.
Yeah, we'll finish it.
Okay. And our first introduction is they're not deathcore anymore, which is interesting. Realistically, because they're named characters, but it makes a bit sense. It makes sense because she's a lot nicer and a lot softer compared to, right? She's willing to work with them. But we're introduced to the enforcers. First thing we notice, they're not breathing the air down here. That's not safe. Mm-hmm. Our benefits and health insurance don't cover that. How fucked up is the air down there?
Is absolutely a benefits thing.
Yeah, and it's nice because a lot of shows like that weren't putting in the effort would just say, "Oh, the air's bad down there," and you would never see it manifest really in any way. But we have every time the Piltovers sort of come down, they have to wear the masks because it's super bad for their health, and they link it pretty well as well to Victor. So they're doing a very good job of bringing in consequences for the world that they've built and showing that, as opposed to just telling you these.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it can't be that bad because people can get accustomed to it, and obviously there's a huge difference between I've lived there for years and I go there once in a police patrol,
well, there's
tax season or whatever.
So there's a great scene in episode 7 that addresses this very thing that you're talking about.
Yes.
Where well, we'll get there when we get there. But
I don't by any means think it's an issue. It just it further. I'm saying it shows us something further, beyond just their insurance doesn't cover the air down here. It's just it's interesting. There's well, you could say it's we don't want to breathe your air. Kind of there's a bit of that maybe.
There's a bit of that, but it's probably a good chunk of it is it's just really bad living conditions and really bad air quality, right? If I went to like in Beijing, I'd be wearing a mask too.
Yeah, I mean, even if you like spent some time in like, you know, oh, downtown London or like a lot of cities in Europe, like it just like really smells like cigarettes everywhere because everyone smokes all the time. And that's not like, you know, it's not like you're gonna die by, you know, going there like once or whatever. And if you like grow up there, you can probably, you know, you don't know the difference because that's all you know. And obviously whatever's going on here is much worse than that, but it's enough for them to be able to adapt fairly well. But if you're not from there, then like yeah, it can
And
probably do a
even
number
some
on
of
your
the
lungs.
even some of the people there, like Victor, right? I don't know, we haven't met him yet, but he's like he's disabled, and the reason given is because of the gas in the fissures down here.
Oh,
So probably they've developed immunity to it, and that's why they can smoke often as well. It's not that much worse. But the main thing I wanted to point out was that they've done a lot of good job integrating it, because when you see that, the two impressions you get are they think they're better than you, and they're too good to breathe your air, and oh shit, they are cold. He must really suck. Which are perfect for how we want the Dawn and Piltover relations to look like. All right, let's get a bit further in.
yeah.
So Echo has some great people skills. Clearly, he's had to deal with this before. We have that shot that lasts like a few seconds where Marcus's uh, view lingers on Echo for a few seconds, and he looks a little scary. But yeah, Grayson just passed her, and Marcus takes a minute to like stare him down, despite the fact that he's like just a young kid. He's
Yeah.
being very polite.
Yep.
And then we get into this scene where they're going to talk and try to anyway. I don't think he likes them very much, Andrew.
Um, getting some good cop, bad cop vibes, and clearly, Marcus is the good cop here. Yeah, clearly.
It's nice to start off with some casual bigotry. Trencher trash.
Yeah.
Right? But it also sets up probably how these sorts of cops interact. Because he's important enough to at least be second in command down for Grayson. So it sort of sets up how these two groups probably interact with each other. Then, of course, Vander this whole time is not really taking them seriously. Nice touch.
Yeah.
Which is why he has a deal with the head person. But he's also, once again, kind of like with Benzo, he isn't lashing out at anyone who assaults him.
I've been watching a lot of like criminal psychology interrogation stuff recently. I don't know why, just like it's very interesting. But what is interesting is that in criminal psychology interrogation stuff, they're always really nice to the criminal when they're interrogating them. Like they make them feel really good and like almost like, you know, like willing to kind of like explain. And once they start getting like upset, it's like, okay, you're gonna lose them here. You don't want to be doing that. So it's interesting that like his first shtick is like, you know something, you like schmuck, you know, trencher
You
trash
shady
and all
son
that.
of a bitch.
Yeah.
You're gonna tell me I'm gonna send you straight to Guantanamo.
So and then also we know, you know, like he and Vander and Grayson, they like it's suggested that they know each other, or that they've dealt with each other before, and they have a way that they kind of do things.
Yeah,
So-
they're explicitly saying this in a second. They have a deal.
So almost seems like Marcus is either oblivious to that or like he just doesn't care because he wants to like get his anger out. Is it ever clear as to why he doesn't like them so much, or does he just generally kind of like have that superiority kind of
Not
difference?
super clear. I think probably episode 2 offers the best sort of explanation, where he has sort of a view of who the Undercity folks are, and basically they're all criminals. So I guess it's kind of like if a cop went to like a mob party or something, right? He thinks they're bad people who hurt people, and he doesn't like them, and he doesn't like that they've been able to continue doing what they've been doing. But that's
And they probably rob them pretty often.
yeah. We'll get some more scenes with Marcus, and
Hmm.
we can talk a bit about it then. But right
Yes.
now, all we really know is that he's a bit of a piece of shit, and he's a filthy piece of shit.
Guilty.
But
All
let's
right.
try to blast through the rest of this.
Yes.
All right, so we get we get Vander handling him with like some humor and grace. Right. Once again, this sort of feeds into his view of we don't want to antagonize the Pilty. And then
And
Grayson basically kicks him out right before she's going to talk to him about, hey, listen, we got a deal.
at the same time, what happens, like, interesting parallels between like what other people kind of do. What do you get when you, have someone um who has a degree of separation from everybody here, and he hates everybody here, and he has like a that kind of authority, like, is he gonna just like stand there and wait? Maybe, like, but maybe he's gonna, like, we kind of like, I don't know when exactly it is, but I know that he's gonna kind of get into some trouble of his own.
Yeah, that's going to
I
start
wonder
episode
how.
2.
Right?
And that's
Episode
also
2.
a very good scene. I like the subtext in the dialogue.
Cool. But yeah, it's interesting that it's like, yeah, you can just like wait outside. Like, I just wonder. I don't know. It's interesting of like,
It tells us at the very least that Grayson can pull rank on him. She's clearly the superior
yeah.
officer.
Oh, for sure, for sure. But it's also like, what if he was, what if he was bi or something? Like bi would like immediately like probably like start crap. Yeah,
Well,
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
you can see his
Nothing
face
really
expression. He
clear.
doesn't look super happy to be kicked out.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
And that's probably why she's kicking him out. It seems like because she's about to go and talk about a deal, which Marcus doesn't seem like he'd be too in favor of.
And also, interestingly, he doesn't argue at all. Like, it's a little choppy, so I can't quite notice like the full animation of like the face and stuff. But um, he's there 100% in like, like aggressive questioning mode. And she just says, "Oh, why don't you just like cool off?" And he's like, "I guess I'm doing that now." So it's kind of like an interesting obedience to him, I guess.
Yeah,
Like
and
also
there is
you
kind of a line in
want to.
episode 4 where he says we have the chain of command for,
Mm.
and we do know that he respects her a great deal.
Mm.
There's a couple of scenes we'll get to where he deals with that, but he does have a lot of respect for her. And this is probably one of the indications that he does, and he trusts her judgment a fair bit, even though he's going to diverge with her a fair bit on how to handle this issue.
Hmm.
Let's deal.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go. Okay, so Echo's spying essentially.
Yeah, there's one frame I wanted to pause on. Get to it. Right. These masks. I wonder if they're going to be important later. Wink, wink. Nut. They are. They are. This is
Okay.
this is foreshadowing because Echo for most of the rest of the series up until episode 7, after episode 3, episode 4, 5, 6. Where's the owl mask? Which
Interesting.
is like an altered version of the mask that the lens is peering through.
Okay.
Also,
Interesting.
also they have some prices. $39.99. We can game theory this. How much is a
no.
coin worth? But,
What's what exactly is the 1,000 that they tried to get the bartender wanted and they eventually gave it to him? Does that compare to this?
By the way, there's a ton of great meme videos about game theory, why you get no bitches, and why your dad left you. That are fucking hilarious. I'll send you a
Oh
couple.
no.
We can
All right.
calculate that not only in this universe, but every possible universe in the multiverse, you get absolutely no bitches.
Oh no. Okay, let's see. Roll the clip.
So, we'll probably the second last part of this scene, but we once again get, or not once again, but we get sort of their views on it. Like, listen, Vander, I don't want to fuck with you, but this was real bad. People got hurt. Okay.
Yeah.
Someone, there needs to be some form of consequence here. Which tells us a couple of things. One, sort of indicates that this deal is secret, which we'll find out this is a deal pretty much exclusively between him and her, and the council doesn't actually know about this. So this is sort of unilateral.
Oh, interesting. Wonder if they knew each other before whatever led him to uh like the whole like crossing the bridge thing. I don't know everything. I don't know much about that whole event. I don't know if we or do hear much about like
We don't
background of that.
actually know a whole lot about Vander and Silco's past. We know that he crossed the bridge thinking things could change, and at some point he tries to kill Silco.
Oh.
Now, I have a theory. But I honestly think it's best if they never tell us. Right? When there's a line from Dan Harmon where he talks about Rick and Morty and doing the background. There's a backstory from Rick and Morty where they fight like the Galactic Federation or whatever. And he makes a point that no matter how we show it or how we do it, it's never going to live up to how people imagine it happened or what they're sort of thinking. And then in later episodes, they do end up showing a lot of the backstory, and it's not very good. My opinion, personally. We're not doing Rick and Morty, so I won't go into super detail about it. But honestly, the show tells us enough to understand vaguely what happened, and that's really all we need. Now, I sort of interpret it, and I have a theory where Vander, in order to not get fucked with, had to get rid of Silco because of how radical he is. Which sort of, under that, adds sort of a second layer. Because it's very clear he didn't want to do it. He says he never forgave himself. But that adds sort of a second layer to this dialogue if you assume the hypothesis is true about how he doesn't give up his own people. Because even if you don't give that theory, he's probably still upset about how he handled the Silco situation. And he doesn't want to ever do something like that again. And that's why he's so against handing over people. Much like he regrets having tried to kill Silco.
I think it's fair to say that wasn't part of like a deal type of thing, but that was him coming to his own conclusion and regretting that conclusion.
Maybe we don't actually know what transpired between Silco and Vander. We only know he tried to kill him. Well, I'm just theorizing. But either way, what probably remains true is he tried to get rid of him for some sort of reason, and he feels horrible about it. So now he's never going to give up someone he cares about for any sort of benefit ever again.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out very soon.
Play a bit more then. That's a little bit of foreshadowing. Belongs to the. Don't know what kind of stuff is in there. Foreshadows how all the illegal shit they're going to find. Right. So there's a couple of things to talk about in there.
Hmm.
There's the
I
couple.
wonder what we both know how that will go. Wonder what that that I wonder what that go actually is like.
I imagine
know.
they're referring to the bridge.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean like at the bridge, a lot of people died on both sides, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's probably why they want to keep the deal. Vander can't hand anyone over. Like, people got to feel safe. He's like, listen, you don't really give a shit about our safety here. This seems like a little bullshit to me.
Yeah, and like okay, so like you're gonna say okay, so Vander gives people up. Like I don't feel safe now. Like if from
Right.
from Zon.
Right. That's a good point. Your people will feel safe after this, but my people will feel less safe if I just start giving them up.
Yeah.
And then we have
That trust that we work so hard to build up.
yeah. And then there's the sort of the we don't get the restatements of I don't give up my own people. I don't do that. That ain't me. I ain't no snitch. But and then we come to Benzo having a very determined face. And let's see how this scene ends. Then we have Chekhov's canister. Smart police move. Make sure they have a way out, so that if it gets bad enough, you can salvage it. But also, there's some pretty good animation for how he holds it up and then presses his head against it. Very upset. Which also, right, is the thing Powder does with all her stuff. Mimicry going on there.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Good question. What exactly is the canister?
Oh, it's basically those tubes that you used to send messages through way back in the day.
Oh, I don't.
Okay, basically there's so how it worked in real life is there's these giant vacuum hoses, and you would put a message in a canister and put the canister in the hose, and it would just get sucked up and go wherever it's supposed to go.
Okay.
They never show it to us, but I imagine it's something similar because we had them in real life.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah. And then
It's,
Vander
it's
presses.
interesting that the tube system would exist between Stone and Piltover.
Well, technically they're the same city and nation at this point.
Hmm.
But I'd imagine there's one or two, or they're in disrepair. I don't know. We don't actually see anyone deliver anything.
Okay.
But also, by the way, the show isn't actually technically steampunk. I keep hearing people say it's steampunk. It's not really steampunk.
What nonsense?
It's.
Is it?
I'll grant you, it's Victorian aesthetic, right? It's based off that time period. But steampunk, very specifically, is like an alternate form of technology that revolves around steam. And neither of these countries use steam. Piltover
True.
uses magic, and Zon uses chemicals, chemtech, which, to be fair, existed around Victorian time. But they're not really using steam, which is kind of the most important part of steampunk.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess there's more to steampunk than just the Victorian aspect. Oh well, that's okay. What
To
about
be
brass?
fair,
There's brass.
to be fair, there are like a lot of similarities, but I wouldn't call this true steampunk.
Yeah, that's fair.
Let's get a bit further. Oh, and now we know Echo overheard everything, so he knows.
I guess he saw everything.
Well,
Well,
there's a scene
yeah,
earlier
you
where
hear-
it shows from his perspective, and you can hear like a muffled version of what happened.
Yeah. He heard it muffled, which is probably enough to get the gist.
Yeah, which is also demonstrates Echo's ability as sort of inventor / engineer,
Yeah,
which may be
so
relevant later.
tinkery type people. Lots of inventy tinkery people.
No, I have it on. And he has that look of shock, like, oh no, what? Oh no, because he probably hates the Piltovers too, and he's a bit of disbelief that Vander would make any sort of deal.
Yeah, that I wonder if talk about like fracturing that trust a little bit. Wonder.
We got a couple scenes left. I know it's past 11, but let's try and
Yeah,
finish up the show.
I think we should be able to finish it.
I wonder who that is. Who could that be?
Probably Powder.
Powder, who has never done anything wrong in her life ever.
Oh, hashtag.
I don't know if you saw that meme. It's my favorite Arcane meme. It's a picture of Jinx, and it's from a show. I think I can't remember which one. But it's a girl with Jinx Overlay. And it's like, I have never done anything in my anything wrong in my life ever. And then it's a picture of Silco. I know that, and I love you. Which is like it's what's his Larry Davis? His show? I can't remember the name of it.
Idea.
But yeah, that's my favorite meme coming from this show. But yeah, she's working on her bombs. Vi shows up. Remember last time we saw them, Powder listened in and she heard, "Oh yeah, Powder, what a worthless fucking loser. Can't do anything right. What a piece of shit." That's a paraphrase, but that's probably something like what she heard. So, Vi's line in is like, "You don't have to be," but I want to pause it here for a particular reason. But once again, Andrew, you were correct. That was the line that most affected her. You get 10 points to your schoolhouse.
Well, with these points, I'm going to rebuild the lanes and give them a school.
What is this? A school for ants? But there's a couple of interesting things happening here, animation-wise. You notice Powder won't look directly at her sister, which is an indicator of shame and whatnot. The whole idea of she's taken to heart the things that they said, and she's repeating that. And then while she's upset, what's she doing with the bomb? Much like Vander.
Yeah. It is. I will be right back. Sorry.
Okay. I'll finish talking about this, I guess.
I'll be.
Okay. He's gone. What was I saying? The line in a second is going to be, "You don't have to be," and she's going to look real sad about it. I can play that. Yeah. So she's not happy about that line. But sort of the subtext is well, not subtext. Let's not go to subtext yet. But she's talking about how you want to talk about it. No, not really. Won't look at her. There's clearly deep feelings of shame, self-loathing. Not in Las Vegas this time. That's a Andres Thompson reference for anyone out there who got that. But clearly, this is very upsetting to her. And then she lays this sort of out on the table and says, "This is my conclusion. I'm not a fighter," which kind of the subtext is, "This is my conclusion. I'm a worthless piece of shit." And Vi's response is, "Well, you don't have to not be a worthless piece of shit."
Back.
Oh, I was just saying how
Yeah, I caught the tail end of that. That's basically like, yeah, it's like not the right consolation that she wanted at the time.
yeah. And also, she's not denying that she was twice the person at half the age.
Yep.
He could say, no, listen, Milo's an idiot. And that's obvious because of how bad he fucked up too. And she could say, he fucked up too, and he's just picking on you a bit. But sort of, it seems like at her heart, she's saying, no, you're clearly different than me. And she's going to say in a minute that's not a bad thing. But right now, what she's sort of giving off the impression is outer, I messed up and I'm terrible. And Vi's like, well, kinda, but you don't need. That's fine.
Yeah, you screwed up, but that's okay. Everybody screws up. Well,
She doesn't
okay,
even
well,
say everyone screws up at this point. She's just saying,
yeah, true.
yeah, you're not a bad person for fucking everything up and ruining our lives. You this piece of shit.
I think it's fine to acknowledge that she did something wrong, but like, it's just not what she wanted to
Right.
hear
There's a
in
way to
that
do
way
that.
right now. Yeah.
And Vi does a good job of that in a minute. But this is not handling it very well. But she's about to get a lot better. Yeah, that's not a great consolation. You got the thing that always fucks up and never works. Thanks, Vi. But she starts offering encouragement at this point, which is probably what she should have started with. But we got here eventually. It's good. She's mindful, not wasting electricity. That costs money. So,
What?
I'm not really sure how the pipe works. I'm going to assume that there's lenses in there.
Totally isn't.
But
But
there's a
fine,
couple
I
of
mean,
interesting parts to this. Where one, she's showing her around, and as we look around Zon, it kind of looks like there's a dude literally missing in the street. So we sort of get a reinforcement, right? Because that didn't need to be there, but was added to sort of add to the atmosphere of it to show how kind of this is a bit of a dirty place.
Yeah.
And then
I thought for a second that the focus was on that person, but and then she kind of explains. But yeah, I don't remember. So, did we see that happen, or was that just like a in between along the way?
she's talking about
Is that
things that
just
happened before this episode takes place.
okay?
Right? And then I thought there was something else I wanted. I don't know. I'll think of something. Let's get through it. Once again, like this is a good part. This is probably some good things to say. She's like, listen, you may have messed up, but here's where Clagger messed up, and here's where Milo's messed up. You're not a total complete unremitted screw up, right? And then as well, what's kind of great about this part of the thing is he's graffitied a place, and this happened sometime in the distant past. They still haven't cleaned it up.
Yep.
So it tells you how like
And-
the cleaning and city services are like.
And I really like the attention to detail of like there's his hand above it as he's falling, trying to catch himself on nothing. There's his butt at the bottom. And also the fact that like here's a real thing in the world that we're seeing that our characters like had an effect on. That's like it's like environmental storytelling like in games, but like
But
yeah, just kind of like pointing to a thing that like, yeah, that little detail over there, that's because that has this story attached to it. That's cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah, and I'm kind of noticing this now. I don't know if I'll say the same thing when we get there, but this kind of looks like the giant stained glass that she jumps across episode.
Hmm.
I don't know. We'll have to think about it when we get to episode. But let's continue on a little bit. So I like this part as well because this isn't a screw up Vi did, which is a bit of an interesting choice.
Yes.
But it's
Yeah, I was
also
wondering what like if she would get to her part or what she would do, but yeah, it is interesting. She doesn't say what like anything that she did, just something that happened to her.
And but what's also interesting is, and why I think this works despite it not being that, that's just talking about a feeling of being helpless and unable to do something that you
Yes.
want or need to do, which is probably the precise emotion that Powder is feeling and what she's worried about. And then, of course, brings her in like, but we stick together because I give you.
Um,
This is a heartfelt moment. It's great. I'm sure nothing she say or do in the next bit will have any sort of long-reaching feed into any sort of thoughts that Powder might have.
no, of course not.
Okay, so we have, we all screw up, we all do poorly. Oh, you did bring some stuff back.
Hmm.
You're stronger than you think. I wonder how this framing of things will affect Powder.
Yep, and also
Once again,
like
we have you did job good, Powder now good girl.
yeah, and like forget the actual like meaningful stuff that was just discussed. Shiny crystal explosions. That's what we should take away from this. Yeah.
That's probably what
Interesting.
Powder will take away from this. Because notice, get rid of all this stuff, Vi. That's what
Yeah,
you were told
Vi.
to do, Vi. You didn't think, Vi.
Yeah, and don't show Vander like, bro, the guy was like trying to explain and things, and you're just like, nah.
Right, and she knows that Vander would probably get rid of it, and he would, and he probably should. But yeah, we have her completely ignoring the message that she's trying to tell. And so I think this is going to parallel where Powder might not be paying attention to what she's trying to say, more attention to what I guess in this case her reactions to things. But don't worry, I'm sure Vi is right. I'm sure at no point will having these crystals ever result in anything negative for these two people.
Well, this is where their lives start to turn around and get for the better, right?
Right? This is a classic YA novel. In a couple episodes, they're going to be backs against the wall, and Powder's going to bust out the crystals and save everyone.
Yes.
Which is I've heard the argument that it's like a deconstruction of a YA novel, which I think is a bit far, a bit extreme. But it definitely sets itself up as sort of like it, it doesn't set itself up, but it has sort of elements that you would see in like a young adult novel. But it takes itself a bit more seriously, right? Like there's consequences for all the actions, which is a bit less common in sort of YA. They find ways to get around these sort of consequences. And as well, when third episode happens, it's all set up so that Powder, it's all foreshadowed and set up, or it's at least communicated to the audience that what's supposed to happen, based off of both archetypes and some of the foreshadowing. Like, don't worry, one day it will work. That this is the moment when Powder saves everybody, which I'm sure is what will happen when we get to episode 3. But for now, let's finish off the last few minutes of the show.
One day.
And now we have the thumbnail we've been using for streams.
Shot. I like that.
And
Your
there's two things.
blue built over in the moonlight. You got your red going into the lanes a little bit. I think that's still technically like the built over side though. But
Right, so there's two things I like and one thing I dislike. The one thing I dislike is, why are they so high up when they're in the Undercity?
well, is it under?
So once again, this is my complaint about how they're doing 3D spacing. Now, my guess would be, if I were to guess how this works, is the last drop goes all the way up to like the surface, and then across the river is still like the tops of Zon. So there's a fissure, and then Vander's building or whatever. Or this may not even be Vander's building, it might just be another part of the lanes. But the top of the lanes go up above the sort of the mouth of the fissure. That's kind of that's my best guess as to what's happening with this shot.
That's a good point because we definitely see them going down. It's very apparent. Now they're here way high up.
Yeah.
Oh,
Still, it's a pretty shot, and
that's pretty.
there's two things I like about this scene. One is Vi says it's important for her that that the city respects her. I wonder if this might have some parallels later in the show. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And then the other thing I like about this is like a perfect ending shot. We're going to work together. We're going to save the day. Everything's looking up, and suddenly we're in another scene. Oh, I wonder what kind of scene this is. Let's see what kind of scene this is.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah, we just had this climactic, like, oh, everything's going to be great. And then we Deckard shoved into a chair and some scary people showing up.
Yeah, guys with clubs.
And notice in the back, there's a sea creature in the yellow tank,
Oh gosh, yeah. What the heck?
right? Let's watch a little bit. And that just looks terrifying. Though we have to ask, also notice his suspenders are broken. Or or at least he has different clasps on each suspender,
Oh yeah.
right? Which sort of goes to sort of the ragtagged nature of clothing and fashion and whatnot. Just sort of putting everything together as long as it works. So of course, Andrew, we have to ask the very serious question: are you a belt man or suspenders man?
Oh. Who are you?
We didn't hear your answer. You cut out.
What?
Yeah, we didn't hear
Belt.
you. You're a belt man?
Belt.
Well, unfortunately, Andrew, I have to tell you, suspenders are
Yeah.
the superior technology.
Um,
At least according to the physics.
no.
You can just burn in hell, I guess.
No, because you see, your weight distribution has to be concentrated around your like waist area, right? Like if you don't want to hang your pants off your shoulders. The whole point is to like never want anything to be distributed on your shoulders. You want it to be away from your shoulders and more on your kind of hips. So the belt is a lot better for that.
Well, I think the shoulders will do a better job of holding your pants than your.
It's demonstrably
There's more grip,
not necessarily true.
right? It's vertical, whereas you're just holding at the sides.
Yes, but then you are putting weight on your shoulders where you don't need to because a belt works just fine.
Listen, I don't know how heavy your pants are. I don't know if you're wearing literally iron pants.
Well, even if you have like a jacket on for like a longer time, you can start to feel a little bit like need to kind of stretch. At least for me, and it just kind of like like that's the whole idea behind like the gambazon, right? Like a gambazon is not like heavy, but even that is like tailored so that it kind of like is more evenly distributed around like your hips will kind of take the weight and stuff, and you can like when you lift your arms up, they're designed so that it kind of like it's not like you're lifting the entire thing. Well, that's kind of a different matter, but yeah, totally. I've always been, whenever I had the option to either carry weight on my shoulders or on my hips, I would always choose on my hips.
All I'm going to say, two things. One, benders are better at keeping pants up. And two, belts are for Batman and the devil, Andrew.
And I don't know why the devil would need, but a lot of other people other than Batman need belts.
Name one.
E.
I thought you were going to say like construction worker, and then I would have said name two. All right, but yeah, we got this creepy looking guy all tatted up and pierced up and real big, and the shot's nice too. He looks huge.
Oh, yeah.
Also, that Dutch angle, that like
The-
I don't know if it's actually a Dutch angle, but the slanted
yeah,
angle,
this is the absolute Duchess of angles.
right? Which sort of gives the impression like you would be lying on the ground looking at him, which is a very scary position.
Yeah.
But let's see. I'm sure these are very nice people who are just helping this young man get home.
You can tell, yeah, totally.
So I like this scene because, well, up to it, we have Deckard's face. Right, we don't know who these people are, but they look scary, and we can see Deckard is clearly afraid. And then at the back, through the window, do you see the giant fishy, Andrew?
Yeah.
Of course, we see the fishy there. Silco, we're going to see in a second, loves the fish, especially sharks, Andrew. This is very important. This is the most important thing I can impart to you for the rest of the show. Silco loves sharks. This will come up later, and it will be very important when it does.
Right. Duly noted. You know what I really like about this? This is the classic example of like introduce a character by having him beat up a tough character. Like, we saw, Deckard shows up, like beats up our heroes, almost beats them up. Like I think, well, he would have. Okay, no, I guess they kind of what's it called? Well, they end up doing don't do like amazingly, but like it's an even match. He's a tough guy. He gives them a significant challenge to the point where they lose their stuff, they get beaten up, they have to get out of there, and here he is now getting absolutely freaking beaten. And not only is he just getting beaten, but you see this insane scene of like this like crazy magical crystal stuff or what I don't know, like alchemy looking things and like crazy creatures. trapped in like glass. Like, what is this? This is like, okay, you're gonna like raise the stakes a bit, but no, you just like take it like 100%. So that's really cool. It's not just like some thug in the shadows and it's like a dark room. They beat him up. Like, I don't know. This is like, I don't know. This is just like on a whole other level. Very cool. Very cool.
And then, of course, to go to your point, one of Arcane's biggest strengths is the interconnectivity of its stories. Right?
Hmm.
Silco isn't being up just a random guy, person we know. Everything is connected. But let's see. Let's start with the. So, just want to say the upper city to finish that. But this is sort of great. Like Silco is relaxed. He's not worried about nothing.
Oh.
And he has this very calm demeanor. I love his voice actor a lot. I think he did a really great job. But also we have him putting some sort
Fantastic
of,
acting this far.
and he's putting the object together, which we don't really know, and then he's lifted up to his eye, but it's not the eye we can see.
Yep.
Right. So once again, much like the bridge scene, we have this slow build to the reveal. Let's go forward a little bit. Right, and this pretty. I like how the dialogue is working here. Right, because we have him like, oh, it's sort of a bit snake-like. He's like, oh, doing something supposed to be, and then he pulls out the, oh, it was them in the upper city. Right, and he pauses. He has that pause, and he goes, Vander's up. I think that he does it a bit more smooth.
Yeah, there's almost a bit of like a genuineness to the conversation being conveyed of like, oh, you just told me something very interesting. Like, what's going on? Like, I mean, like he's almost like we're just like kind of having a chat, by the fireplace or whatever.
But it also tells us that Silco knows Vander, because all he told him was that it was the kids that you were having me follow in the upper city. We did the thing in the upper
Yes.
city,
He knows the connection.
right? And it was an important enough connection that he had someone following them. Period. So, and especially because this is right after we hear Vander say, "There's worse things than enforcers."
And this kind of gives us an idea of what that might be pretty clearly.
And obviously, he's very interested there because he stops whatever the thing he was doing with his eye is to talk and find out more about this.
Hmm.
Let's see.
And we know that the eye thing is like pretty important, like at least later on, like.
Yeah, which we haven't seen his eye yet. Once again, building up to keeping some stuff hidden and building up to it properly. Let's have him get out of the seat. Right, and there's the turn, and we have this glowing eye. That's a little creepy and a little scary. And first thing everyone thinks is, oh, Zuko, but
Well, I mean, I guess there's maybe a bit of visual similarity, but I don't think that.
Well, to
I
be
think there
fair,
are other things much more similar than Zuko.
to be fair,
Like I don't think Zuko has anything in common with Silco beyond,
yeah, but to be fair, at this point,
vague visual.
we don't really know anything about Silco at this point, other than that he's a bad guy with a face scar.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't really make me think of Zuko much.
All right, well, it's a connection I've seen people make
It
on their first time watching it.
It's definitely crossed my mind, but just like the context and the conversation, like Zuko, when you meet Zuko, he's not introduced in like a creepy sort of way.
Well, no,
He's introduced at the head of the ship.
They're obviously different characters, but
Yeah,
as a
but
placeholder name, Zuko makes sense compared to really anything else you could throw. Because we don't actually learn his name until episode 3.
Oh, okay.
right? So for the
I
first
didn't
few
know that,
episodes,
but
we need to call him something, and Zuko seems to be one people are settling on because of the visual symbol.
okay.
But
I guess there's yeah. I don't know.
it's but this turn is nice because once again, like the bridge scene, we get a little bit of a reveal, but not like the full extent of it. And as he comes into the light, we'll see the rest of it.
It's a very subtle, just visual, graphical take. Like you might even think that, like, is that like a reflection? Like, what's going on? Yeah, it's very nice.
Excuse me, sir. Have you been to an optometrist? All right, let's this is the last scene. Let's get through a bit more of it. Right, smartest thing you ever said, boy. which is a pretty great line, right? It's very clearly showing some power differences and showing how much he cares about what's going on with Vander and them. And then the whole scene is shot from his behind him. So once again, we don't see the face until it's revealed that's going to happen right here.
Street.
We'll get into this scene in a second, but the dialogue before is pretty good. We have Silco using the line is our timeline is moved up, which is a great
Hmm.
line because it tells you one that this is something he's been planning probably for a while, but now there's an impetus to action that makes sense in the context of the story, and we know that he's pretty far along the plan as well because like oh well side effects are stabilized. This was something he was planning to pull off probably relatively soon, but he's moving it up
Even on
faster.
that, even on that, our timeline has moved up. I don't know if this is intentional or if it matters given the uncertainty of the spacing. But if Piltover is physically above, then there's a little bit of an extra little thing to that. Like yeah, like our planet is moving up and we're going upwards. Where's
Interesting.
Piltover?
I didn't think of that. It's an interesting look at that.
Maybe.
And then of course we have them put the cat in with the mouse.
Oh,
A lot of
and that
people,
like that's super chill. And then he like freaking clamps it down, and it's like oh.
yeah, it's a weird odd because normally, because you would assume the glass is pretty strong, right? And because if this was just like a fish tank and they were putting in a cat to eat the mouse, you wouldn't need all the clamps and stuff. So something clearly has
Yeah.
got to happen. And then the music adds to this, where it sort of has this building up tension sound to it.
And the stabilizing thing.
Yep. And so something weird's going on. And then even in this scene, we can see the outline at the top of the water. It's like a purpley blue, so it's a bit hidden, but we're going to start seeing it more shifting to that pinkish purple.
Okay.
And already animals are getting hurt, and no one likes that. I'd like to talk about Refn, our Lord and Savior, Nicholas Windig Refn.
Wait, what?
If this was a shit show, you know how they would have done this scene? They would have put the cat in with the mouse, and then someone would have said, "Oh, you feeding the cat?" And the other person would have said, "No, I've injected him with this super strong drug with some side effects that should make him." Right? That's how they would do this scene. There's no dialogue in this scene, and it's not necessary. Everything's communicated visually. He taps on the thing, wakes the mouse up. Mouse sees cat. Oh no! What's my immediate reaction to danger? drink the water? Mm. And then it focuses on the water and has those bubbles up. It communicates to us by having that focus that this is important. And strange because water typically, I don't know if you're aware of this, Andrew, water typically isn't purple.
Yeah. The last time I drank purple water, I turned into a werewolf type of thing, so
And
just
then
wouldn't recommend it to anyone.
and then we see the rat in pain. Right? He's
Yeah,
screaming
and can I just say this animation? Oh my goodness, that's really freaking cool. That's a very interesting style. This thing is like chock full of like like intermixing different, very very different styles that have that like strangely work really well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the things. One of my biggest criticisms, and it's not even my criticism. Oni plays has this or Zach last name's Hayes. But Zach from Oni plays Widsnammer. We did that show, Smiling Friends. One of his big complaints about a lot of modern animation is he'll look at a lot of the shows and ask, why is this animated? Like seriously, why is this an animation as opposed to a live action show? And a lot of people just put together these shows where it could have been live action, but they did the animation because it was cheaper, and it doesn't really care a lot about the artistic merit or the aesthetics or the style or any of that. Whereas Arcane is very clearly a show that could have only been made through some form of animation, and probably could have been only been made to this quality through this style of animation.
Hmm. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, to cap off what we've seen so far, we have seen where he's taking this willingly and then is in a massive amount, which is a little odd because why would you do that to yourself? And then we started to get the transformations. And we never see throughout this entire scene the full transformation. We only get snippets and pieces, which is once again that build up all the way up till episode 3. But let's watch a bit more and a bit more of it.
Whoa.
Right, and so that once again we don't ever see it, and then we see it from the eyes of the monster, or the monster rat, and we don't see the carnage, but we know it's bad because of the cracks in the glass and the blood and whatnot, instantly justifying the decision to lock it down tight. And so it leaves it to the imagination a fair bit. I think I talked about this with like Lolita in the last episode, but it leaves it to the imagination, and it comes off in your mind to be incredibly horrifying because it's like your mind runs wild with it. And then we've just seen this sort of horrific affair. And he turns to him and says, "Do you have a subject in mind?" Silco looks over, camera goes to the chair. Someone just volunteered. And
Oof.
cuts. Which is a great way to end it, because we had this sort of big rise moment at the end of the last scene, where everything's looking up, and then we get this where he comes crashing down, major danger vibes. Something we've ended on a note where no, things are not looking to shape up to be okay right now.
No.
It's like there's some serious shit coming.
There's some nefarious evil afoot.
Yeah, and then of course
But yeah,
we get
sorry, go ahead.
and then we get a bit of I think I'm echoing a bit on your end, but you get a bit of characterization about Silco, where he's like volunteering, where Vi was more, I'm gonna go and do this, you can come with me if you want. Silco is more, all right, we need some test subjects. I think I got someone who I can sacrifice for the cause.
Yep. Do you think he's on stream with Hassan?
I think Silco has principles.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, that was an awesome final scene. Like, even just for a conclusion of a pilot, like, we already have a lot of really really fantastic stuff, and now it's just like it really takes it to like times 10, times like 100 or whatever of like stakes of like you don't want to know, or you do want to know, but like you don't want this guy to be able to make use of this of this drug because terrible things can happen because of that.
Yeah, and we don't know what his motives on anything are. We just know he is incredibly dangerous. Has something
Yep.
against Vander.
Yep. Very
Which
cool.
sort of goes back to consequences for every action.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. And
That I think that maybe is what makes the show so good, is because that part of the theme that I'm picking, or like that we're kind of like discussing here, is that like consequences, right? It's what Vander teaches them. And that fundamentally is, well, yeah, foundational to storytelling. It's because rather than and then, right? Like things happen because someone did something. Because that's such a strong element of the theme of the show, I'm glad that they, focus on that, because so much things like it's like, yeah, theme, but then like your theme doesn't make any freaking sense because you forget that like things happen because of something. You can't just
this is the Trey Parker, Matt Stone argument. They had they talked about this, and like the issue with stories is and then instead of therefore. This happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. Terrible story. This happens, therefore this happens, therefore this happens. Good story.
yes.
And it really, and part of the reason why this story when the consequences of that is the level of interconnectivity that Arcane has, because everything has a cause connected to everything else, right? Vander wants to go across the bridge. Therefore, all of his the leader, all of his supporters show up. Therefore, because Piltover doesn't want to give them equal rights, violence breaks out. Because the violence breaks out, Powder and Vi's parents die. Because they've died, they're alone. Therefore, they end up with Vander. They end up with Van because they're children of Vander. They start emulating the traits. Therefore, they go off and try to rob the place. Because they are inexperienced, therefore, there's a giant explosion. Therefore, the Piltovers investigate it and start lock up Jace. Right? Everything's connected. Everything has a line of interconnected reasons why it turns out the way it does.
Yeah, we're gonna find out all about the next therefore in the next episode, right, Max?
Yep, which will be next Wednesday at 8:45. It seems like we've finally fixed all of our technical issues.
Excellent.
But who knows what the fuck's going to happen? I think we've made some progress. We have I think our layout's a little better now, and our audio is, despite the initial issues we had prior to start, you've sort of fixed it. I will take down the live streams and then re-upload it as a single video. Make life a bit easier for everyone.
Awesome.
And yeah, Andrew, I want to shill your shit.
Join my Discord. It will give you access to the beta test, closed beta for game Air Obscure. Air Obscure, now called Air Obscure: A Hunt in the Dark, which you can wishlist on Steam. And I have a channel, and I talk about game stuff and maybe some potentially maybe political / religious stuff if I feel like getting into that. I don't know. That's it.
Right, there should be. I'll have to take it down and re-upload it, but the re-upload, and I think the live stream as well, does have a link to your channel in it. So we forgot to do our daily fair use of the overlay image. I like the usage of green and blue as colors, because green very well represents Zon, which is being used in conjunction with Silco, and represents Piltover, which is being used by. My criticism is, well, Vi works with Piltover. She's not really a part of Piltover. There you go, fair use.
You got it. Okay.
Yeah. You can find me on this channel that I'm on now. Feel free to subscribe, like the video, all that shit. I've also got a website that has my links to everything as well as shorts, and whatnot. I think that's pretty much it for me. Any last words you want to say, Andrew? All right, I guess he's gone. Everyone, remember to stay hydrated and